In today's episode, we take a look at a jeweller's raid from 1994. The first part will be the reconstruction, and the second part will be the police investigation.
Were you anywhere near Stratford in Warwickshire on the morning of the 22nd of June? It was a Wednesday, the start of a normal weekday in the shopping streets of the town centre. At 8:30 a.m. in Wood Street, Stephanie Wall was on her way to work at George Pragnell's Jewellers, where she's the manageress.
That particular morning it was a fairly straightforward morning, typical, fairly relaxed. I opened the post in Mr. Pragnell's absence. We have to display the merchandise, quite a lot of it, before the shop opens. We have to make sure that the place looks neat, tidy, clean. So it's fairly busy before we actually open the doors to people.
It's now about 9:30 on the outskirts of Stratford. Annette Hilton works for a local firm of engravers. She had a delivery to make at Pragnell's that morning.
Oh, this form we were talking about, Nigel, it's arrived.
I've just got to quickly go and check the windows, and I'll get a paper cross as well.
Okay.
Minutes later, Annette was arriving at Pragnell's with her parcel.
I did notice somebody on my left-hand side, but I didn't really take much notice, I just carried on.
Morning. Down! Everybody down! You! Get down and stay down!
I was terrified, absolutely terrified, because you're aware of this violence going on around you that you can't do anything about. The thought that the gun might go off, that it might hit you, it might hit somebody else, is just totally terrifying. The noise was very intense, it was quite violent. It was the scare tactics they were using, shouting, a lot of breaking of glass. There's this atmosphere that they have control over the situation. They are very violent people, and they would not have hesitated to shoot and maybe kill somebody if necessary.
I literally tried to take in as much as I could see. The windows were being cleared. I was very concerned for my colleagues. It was quite a traumatic time.
By now, Hilda and Janet had reached Pragnell's shop.
I noticed the car. The driver of the car had a rubber sort of latex mask over his head.
At that moment, a police car on routine patrol turned into Wood Street.
The police are here! We've got to go! Come on, you guys!
We were just simply on our way in to have breakfast at Stratford Police Station. And then I sort of thought jewellers, mask, Cosworth, and then realised that it was an armed robbery.
I don't know why I opened the door and tried to do what I did. It was just instinct. I hadn't seen a gun at all. And I was quite shocked when he sort of rolled over and said that he'd got a gun. And I'll shoot you. I think that was when I decided it was time to let him go, because it's no point being a dead hero, is there?
Well, I tried my best to reverse into the car, but there was a civilian car behind me that was blocking my view.
Look out, they've got a gun!
Assistant supplied, Wood Street, Stratford, armed robbery.
The only option then was to turn round, and by the time I'd got round, which was fairly quick anyway, the Cosworth was stopped.
The police car had broken free of the traffic just too late to catch them.
The feelings stay with you for a long time. The people who were at the forefront of the attack have been quite badly affected, as a lot of the members of staff were. Yes, the stock is replaceable, but what it does to people is much more damaging.
And they still are recovering. Mr. Stanley, where did the getaway car go next?
Well, it drove at high speed out of Stratford, and it was abandoned about 3 miles away in a gateway in Ingun Lane.
And then he transferred to another car?
That's right, yes. We believe they transferred to a blue Mondeo car. The reason for that is that we can say that a man was walking his dog along the lane, and he saw this car being driven at high speed, and between where the Cosworth was abandoned and the Mondeo was seen is where various items of clothing were discarded, including the masks.
And we were able to use those, of course, for our reconstruction. What clues do you get from those clothes?
Well, the best clue really comes from this jacket. From the inside, forensic examination has revealed a label with a name V. Veenendaal, and we'd be interested to hear from anyone who can throw any light on that.
Jekke Natvier looks Dutch, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
Any news of the stolen watches?
Well, we've not recovered any of the property as yet, but we do know that a Rolex watch and a number of Omega watches have been offered for sale to dealers in Manchester and Blackburn, and we would appeal to anyone who has been offered top quality watches in dubious circumstances to contact us.
And there's a Manchester connection with the silver Cosworth as well. What do you need to know about that?
That's right, yes. This Cosworth was stolen in Manchester on the 18th of May, and as you've seen from the film, it was on registration plates J771GNV. We'd be interested to hear from anyone who made up those number plates, but I would stress at this stage that vehicle with that registration was not used on this offence.
No.
We just would like to hear from anyone who has made up those number plates.
Between the 18th of May and June the 22nd,
That's right.
you need sightings of that. And as you say, it's an legitimate car now, so we don't need to know about that. You feel there's an urgency, don't you, to catching these men?
Yes, this was a carefully planned robbery. We're dealing with violent and ruthless criminals who have clearly committed this type of offence before, and it's important that we do catch them.
Right, I hope you do. Thank you very much indeed. There is a reward, a substantial reward, in fact, if you can help Mr. Peter Stanley and his colleagues on this one. Please ring us straight away if you know of anything that might help. In the studio here, the number as usual is 0500 600 600.
It's a raid that looked pretty amateurish by the Crime Watch video, but be under no illusion. The gang we are going to cover today are chillingly precise, well planned and organised. The George Pragnell raid netted over £220,000 in jewellery and high-end watches. There was an earlier raid in 1981 where the getaway car was a Mercedes. £250,000 was stolen in that robbery. To this day, it remains unsolved. Police had no suspects for the Stratford raid, but another gang was causing West Midlands police a major headache. It was a gang from Kingsheath, Birmingham, who were career criminals. The leader of the gang, Michael Witheridge, was in his mid-40s. A heavy smoker, drinker, gambler, and loved a toot. He had property and land all over the country, all bought with proceeds of crime. He knew everybody and everybody knew him. He always had a flash car and rolls of cash. After his divorce, he practically lived at the pub, the Asher Meadow, which is now a row of houses, and the King's Arms, now called the Crown. Both pubs at the time were a main hangout for criminal fraternity and blue-collar workers. If he wasn't there, he was in the bookies or playing golf. Michael Witheridge's gang consisted of his younger brother, John Witheridge. They were local legends. The gang robbed anything: betting shops, track bookies, drug dealers, post offices, building societies, banks, construction equipment and tools, motorhomes, precious metals and cars. Because they'd done robberies in different counties, the police's failure to communicate with each other meant this gang operated without fear of ever getting caught. The sums of money from each robbery was breathtaking. Though they drove nice cars, the money they acquired never stretched to their rundown council houses. His ex-wife lived with their 2 daughters in a £600,000 gated property. Michael Witheridge, as head of the gang, stopped committing crimes himself after doing 3 years for theft, after getting caught with a lorry load of industrial new copper piping that was robbed from a factory in Garrett's Green. A police chase ensued and the lorry clipped some parked cars and crashed. He didn't come quietly. The younger brother John Witheridge acted as a Fagin-type character to recruit young members into the gang to commit the robberies. His radio station of choice was the local police on the scanner. He had no police record. Michael Witheridge organised the robberies, which included conducting target reconnaissance and arranging getaway vehicles, but had limited participation in the actual offences. He would help fence the goods all under the money, buying cars on finance, then paying the whole balance off. If police ever questioned him, the high-end cars were on the drip, and he had the paperwork to prove it. An element of violence was used in the offences, with staff and public being threatened by firearms. But soon the gang, being watched by one police force, would come under the watch of another police constabulary, looking into the Stratford-upon-Avon raid. With the Stratford raid, police leads being extremely weak, a Crime Watch reconstruction was aired using the same car from the raid, a Sierra Sapphire Cosworth. The plate in the raid was cloned off another Sierra. The police's line of inquiries was the number plates. Where was they made? The clothing dumped after the raid, and the shops the thieves may have tried to sell the stolen watches. The number plate lead had proved a very successful line of inquiry in the past, but this time it had turned up nothing. In the past it had been dubious employees working for legit firms that make the plates. When police put the pressure on, the names are normally given up quite quickly, as they don't want to be an accessory to the robbery committed. The clothing got no calls, and the information of the watches trying to be sold on was vague to say the least. But a phone call tipped to police named David Rodder, 28 years old, of Kings Heath, Birmingham, a key member of Witheridge's gang, who was selling high-end watches held from the others in the gang without the gang's knowledge. Rodder was put under surveillance. It led Warwickshire Police to Michael Witheridge's gang. Now 2 police forces were watching Witheridge. It was now just a matter of time. The robbery in Stratford-upon-Avon was unusual in how organised it was. Only high-end items were targeted. They knew what they were after. With one of the gang dressed as a woman staking out the shop, it raised no suspicion from the members of staff. The 2 robbers dropped off assisted in the raid, and there was a getaway driver. The police car showing up showed how calm the gang was, and the getaway driver escaped being boxed in and then waited for the other 2 members of the gang before speeding off. The actual footage was caught by a Japanese tourist filming members of their family across the island. You can see one of the officers in the shot as the Cosworth speeds off. The robbery was extremely well planned and successful. Police concentrated on her high-end watches, as this was the bulk of the money from the raid and the only thing that won't be melted down. The watches, like cars, have their own registration paperwork and service books. It is impossible to sell them to legit shops without them. So they was looking for these watches to pop up in the criminal fraternity. With no cash from the raid, the gang would have to wait a few months for the heat to die down to move the jewellery on. The next raid was 2 Caterpillar stolen diggers, which were sold on the next day. The buyers were already lined up. Then there was a burglary, a takings raid at the pub. A few months after, a digger was stolen and driven into the side of a ride-on motor mower shop. Equipment valued at £62,000 was taken. Neighbours across the road were threatened with a shotgun. There was no rhyme or reason. Each raid was completely different, but still netted tens of thousands of pounds. Though the items were shifted quickly, they would be sold on at rock bottom prices. Police upped the surveillance on Michael Witheridge, and he was spotted with other members of the gang, and they were also followed. The gang were filmed checking out a farmhouse to rob in Warwickshire. After hearing it had a safe. At 2 AM, John Witheridge was filmed stealing a red Astra SRI in a car park in Digbeth. The alarm went off for one bleep, and the car was driven away in 22 seconds. 2 days later, 5 of the gang, including John Witheridge, were arrested in the Astra SRI and a white MG Montego. It had false plates along with the Astra. The gang had tools for a break-in, torches, rope, masks, a Beretta 70 pistol and a Browning high-power 9mm. These were taken in a raid on a gun collector a few months previously. The gang leader Michael Witheridge pleaded not guilty to conspiracy and handling stolen goods. He received a 10-year sentence. Younger brother John Witheridge pleaded not guilty to conspiracy, handling stolen goods and taking part in several of the robberies. When his BMW was searched, £8,500 in cash wrapped in plastic was found in the rear seat, and a sawn-off shotgun with a full box of 25 shells. He received a 17-year sentence. The rest of the gang was sentenced for 15 years each. Adam Kirkham, who was 30 years old, Tony Matthews, who was 36, David Crossland, who was 28 years old, all from Kingsheath, Birmingham. David Rodder, 28 years old, also from Kingsheath, was put under police protection after a contract was put on his life in custody while awaiting trial. Finding out about the contract, he turned on the gang for a new life and identity when he was released. He was given a 4-year sentence, and his testimony was the final nail in the gang's coffin. It is thought that the driver on the majority of the robberies was the younger brother John Witheridge. No more information has appeared on any of the gang in the news archive since the convictions.